All right. Well, the news of the day is always floating around in craziness and all this insanity that we what is that thing? We always lose sight of something crazy that can happen that we don't even like register as, being that big of a deal. We don't even like essentially understand the news that's coming. You'll get some atrocity in Europe, you'll get some crazy event that occurs in the third world, some war like Pakistan and India that pops up and just goes away. And nothing ever becomes of it. It's the meme nothing ever happens bro kind of deal. But sometimes for those of us who are paying attention, news comes out that is just like, here we go. The world is getting crazier and crazier, and these events just keep getting worse and worse and worse and worse, and eventually go to, you know, whatever happens, the destiny of humanity that is in the forefront for us. Now, Trump came out a few days ago, like Friday, right before Halloween there, and was just like, yeah, nuclear weapons testing are resuming. U.S. is resuming nuclear tests. Isn't it weird how the news just forgets about it? Yeah, look at Cardi B's new album. We're right on to the next thing, as if it never even happened. Now let's look at some of the news of that, because yeah, I mean, I think this all stems from the fact that other countries are testing nuclear weapons. I mean, it's obvious. Why would China, Russia, Iran, all these countries, why would they adhere to our policies and our procedures on, you know, you're not allowed to have weapons that might protect your country from us one day kind of thing. So let's have a look at this. China has denied being secretly testing nuclear weapons, refuting a claim from Donald Trump. Now, why would Trump say that China's testing nukes, hey? Why would they do that? Uh, well, obviously because they are. They're making nukes. There's this whole thing about like the world's stockpile of nukes. And yes, there is some gravity to those numbers given on, ability to create them. But all these countries, they're especially like non-Western, like I'm a Western country, the non-Western countries, I have no doubt in my mind that these other countries are making nukes, testing nukes. And nuclear weapons for me, I've always been so fascinated with them. My whole life, my entire life has been spent fascinated with something so evil, Just so undeniably terrible to the human cause. Some people argue that we haven't, had as many wars because of nukes, but I mean, there is definitely something to be said for their awfulness if they are used. So, the testing nuclear weapons suddenly a major topical, largely dormant for the last 3 decades, and yeah, it has been. It's so like dormant, It's like nukes are just this secret thing. It's hard to believe they even exist, but they actually do. Um, and Russia testing a nuclear powered missile, nuclear powered, not armed, and submarines and all this kinds of stuff that they're doing. Yeah, I mean, we would be stupid not to do our own. The most spectacular nuclear tests were those conducted open air late 1940s and 1950s. Now, that's something to be said because, yes, the nuclear weapon has many uses. And for the longest time, after, in the 60s, I mean, other countries did this, but a lot of these more developed nations were testing them underground to contain the radiation, to hide the horror of atmospheric tests, that iconic explosion that is just absolutely terrible, terrible to witness. So I mean, the last atmospheric test from the US was on 1962. So will they conduct atmospheric tests? Oops. But they most certainly are going down the route of testing them. Now, if you know anything about nukes, they're always being tested, not for actually detonating them. Here's a Reuters one on it. They're always testing them because they always have to be maintained. They'll always have a component of degradation on many fronts from them. You know, the atomic side, the scientific side, the actual like mechanics of it. You know, the conventional charges in them. It all has to be continually maintained and swapped, and you know, to make sure they're 100% working. Because if you just let them, you know, parts of them degrade and that, so they always do have to be tested, so to speak. But actually detonated, it hasn't happened in a long, long time in the West. Now, you'll know that North Korea, the old North Korea, actually did test one in 2016, and they may have tested more. Let's see, CBS. President Trump on nuclear testing, the government shut down immigration tariffs. And see, that's what I'm talking about, is that, like, for the absent-minded sheep media viewer, you know, you have all these things. You got, like, Portland riots and government shutdown and EBT stopping, Russia and the war in Ukraine and Palestine, blah, 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 all these things that are so unbelievably insignificant in the grand scheme of things comparison to thermonuclear warfare, which would just devastate life. It would change every single person's life on Earth forever. So yeah, I mean, look at how it gets buried in a thing like this. This should be the top of everyone's news, but they just don't. Talk to 60 Minutes, Obamacare, you know, look how they just gets buried in that. You can't even find it in this transcript. Democrats bitching about, you know, the government shutdown. You got CBS going after Biden and Obama. It's just like, oh yeah, by the way, we're testing nuclear weapons. It's like, what? It's like, oh yeah, but there's immigration stuff and blah 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 blah. So this is what I'm telling you, is that, like, this has got, yeah. So maybe this is this. Maybe they're covering for this. Trump's planned tests are not nuclear explosion, the U.S. Energy Secretary says. The U.S. is not planning to conduct nuclear explosions, Energy Secretary Chris Wright said, claiming global concerns President Trump's immediate. These are not nuclear explosions. These are what we call non-critical explosions. Now, you'll know that China did the same thing. China recently did the same thing. It's a non-critical nuclear explosion. It's like a nuke, but it's not actually the same mechanism of an actual full-blown nuclear. But this is beside the point. This is beside the point. Were they going to, you know, roll out the Nevada test grounds and start, you know, detonating nukes? No, because they don't need to. There's no need for them to do that. They've already collected all the data they need. There's already guaranteed that U.S. nuclear weapons work. There's no point in detonating them besides just showing of force. So that's another thing that people don't understand, too, is that we've collected all the data that the U.S. particular has needed for, you know, thermonuclear war. We know how they work. We know what they do. And to just detonate them willy-nilly is pointless. Really pointless. Now, what Russia and China are doing is these other things, like these non-critical nuclear tests. You know, the Poseidon, these devices that carry nukes. We know the nukes work. There's no point in testing them for no reason. But then again, to show them off, to show off nuclear weapons, is, you know, that's a thing. That's what they did during the Cold War, is the one side could be like, oh my god, look at a nuke. oh my God, look at a nuke, and they're scaring each other, and that's a portion of it too. But the very thought that nuclear weapons are in our collective consciousness, in our mythos, and people just don't seem to really give a shit is fucked. And that is like the core of it's like is is not just the absolute worst, is that you can get, you know, oh, we're by the way, we're testing nuclear weapons, or types of nuclear weapons, or delivery methods like Russia is doing, or China, and Iran is probably still back to developing nuclear weapons of their own. You could say that in a regular news cycle and people wouldn't even care. It's like the average person is so caught up in bills and taking care of their debts and family and friends and engagements, and hearing about the immigration online, and what the latest pop star who had died of an overdose is. People are so inundated with all these things that, and this shadow of nuclear war has held over humanity for so long without anything happen, that it's just white noise. it's, it's like we just don't have the capability to fathom what a full-blown nuclear war, which could start like a spark. One thing happens, another thing happens, another thing happens. Red alert, beep, press the button. All the nukes come from Russia. All the nukes get launched from US. And now we have thermonuclear war. China is now in the fray. Trump had that weird meeting with Xi Jinping too. It just came out of nowhere, and yeah, yeah, it calls in the U.S. to global stability. That's how it is. That's how our nations have functioned for a very long time. Is that basically rich people just want to sit back and be rich. They don't want World War III. So, one takes an inch, one takes an inch, give a little, take a little, and that's all they're willing to really do, because at the end of the day, nobody wants nuclear war, but it's a card that we have and we can play. But why would this news come out? MSNBC, look at this, running propaganda news. Nuclear war! Oh my God! Look at what Trump's done. President Donald Trump is confused. Jesus Christ. I knew MSNBC was propaganda news, but let's read this. Trump is confused. Just moments before his meeting with President Xi Jinping, who posted a baffling message on social media saying it immediately resumed testing of no one knew what he meant or meant by saying it. I mean, we know what he was saying. He's trying to be scary. He was trying to, show a force. And isn't it weird that it all happened at the same time as meeting with Xi Jinping, which I think did not go very well. I don't think that they're two. Xi Jinping and Donald Trump are two of the most powerful people on the planet. They both control the most powerful nations. They both are in control of enormous militaries, and a war between China and US would be just cataclysmic for both sides, no matter what you feel about both sides. So, thirdly, clarifying, do you actually mean you start exploding nuclear weapons? Well, they've tried to reboot that. Something is not done in more than 30 years. Russian tests, and that's the trump card. Is that no pun intended? Is that yeah? Literally, Russia is testing those kinds of things. Yeah. And for many people, like especially sheep-brained media heads who just spend all day yarping on their phone all day, the thought of a nuclear weapon just cannot be fathomed for them. They can't they can't um, picture the evil of these weapons. Doesn't won't include explosions right now. So it's this whole thing of, do we even have to care? Well, obviously, I mean, nuclear war would be awful for everyone. But realistically speaking, next week you know, Russia, Dmitry Medvedev saying, U.S. will pay dearly if it gets involved in Ukraine, and then the U.S. gets involved in the Ukraine. Now we're sending Tomahawk missiles. It's just like, it's like, it's just like, what's it gonna take? What is it gonna take for the big red button to be pressed? When would people who are rich and powerful and have everything they want and could desire in the world decide that, what, fighting and winning and destroying the enemy is worth more than, the sanctity of our planet? And let's just pray it never gets there, because nuclear weapons are not something we want happening. We just don't want them. That's it. That's all there is. We just don't want nuclear weapons. Don't. In a perfect world, and then this will never happen, we would just get rid of all the nuclear weapons and erase the idea of that. But people would probably figure out how to make them again, even if we wiped it all from the record books and destroyed every last weapon. So, I mean, we're just kind of stuck with these things. And in today's modern, crazy world, everyone's denying everything. We're on to the next Flashpoint Media. How the hell are we ever going to know when the time comes? You know what I mean? Super crazy. I just thought I had to get my thoughts out on there because I love nukes. I love nukes more than, they're just so bizarrely beautiful and horrific. And the radiation and all the things that they do are just terrifying. Will we ever get there? Who knows?